Yeah, and it wasn't even at our house. Calm down, Tanya. Don't say all that. No. Tanya agreed with me that it had been a battle. It's not between us. Oh, man. So I didn't think we were going to, and it's the live version, we might not have recordings of today, which is fine. You know, for years we came to church without recording anything. I was thinking about the Asbury Revival. I'll go ahead and tell you, I know two things about the Asbury Revival right now. So if anybody knows more than me, you're not saying much. This is what I know. There is a revival at Asbury College going on right now. The other thing I know about it is that 50 years ago, my dad got spirit-filled sitting in the midst of the first one. God's Spirit can move anywhere, folks. If you sit there and say you got spirit-filled at a Methodist seminary, I mean, you think about the statement of that. When you think about the statement that came along this morning, this is your free part. When you think about the statement that came along this morning that a Church of Christ is looking to donate a van and they're going to give it to Hope. See, when I preached last time, I said there's going to be one thing. I said, I believe that this year that the Spirit of God is going to pour out upon His people more than He ever has before. And I honestly believe that. Wholeheartedly, I believe that. And I look for His Spirit to speak to me, to talk to me, to guide me in every situation of every day. And it's not that it's 100% of the time that I'm following Him right, but what I'm saying is I have felt His presence more already in this year than I ever have before. I've been on the side of the road crying in tears of His presence, just riding between towns. I travel all over, put about 50,000 miles on a vehicle a year. I've felt His presence. But this year already, I have just felt that the Spirit of God is just going to fall on His people. And as David says, such a time for this, it's definitely going to be such a time for this. So I believe this morning, whether we have a recording or not, you're sitting in the right place for the right time for God's Word in your life. Whether it comes from Brother Woodward or not. It's funny, David said that Brother Woodward was not preaching. I was there thinking, well, I wonder what my last name is now. Yeah, Tanya's husband. Anyway, I want to dive on into this. I'm going to try to be still because we've had internet problems. We've basically had the whole system that was operating cameras and what you see on the screen and the music. We basically lost all IP addresses to every camera, every recording. Okay, and so that crashed, and when that crashed, I tried to bring it up. We're relying on a server that's sitting in the next building. Okay, I've got one cable that runs from there. I was able to get a switch operating, and I'm feeding IP addresses off of that and praying that the speed. I looked at Chad this morning, and I said, well, we've made it through 3 songs without anything crashing. We're doing it. When we got to tithing off, and I was sitting there thinking, this thing might actually work. But I'm going to tell you, I'm hanging on a limb. My faith in what's going on up there, if something messes up, it is not Chad's fault. Trust me, we've got a twig, and we're sitting there like somebody hanging off a cliff, and there's a little twig, little root. That's what it looks like up there right now. We are hanging on. And we'll see if we can pull through this. But so that's been my morning. Even during prayer, man, I'm sorry. I was running between rooms, and I was hoping I wouldn't show a screen that showed something restarting up here. But I believe that God has revealed something to me. So I am going to read a short verse, and then we're going to jump back in the Old Testament. And what I went through all that stuff for is to say I'm going to take things slow. Now, if you've listened to me preach and me talk slow, those two things haven't happened yet, I don't think. The only thing that I did was increase the amount of words I said because my son used to sit over there, Cole used to sit over there and time me. And, he said, you did pretty good this morning, Dad. You went 20 minutes. That was a long time back then. So I thought about slowing down, and I realized it's hard for me to slow down, but I'm going to try to for Chad, especially with the verses, because I've read this 100 times, especially in the past week, and Chad has no idea where I'm going. All right, and plus we're hanging on by a thread up there, so if y'all see me pause for a second, I'm not confused. There's not a medical situation. Just taking it easy. Yeah. You just keep, as long as I look like I'm about to fall back, yeah. He knows what to look for. He knocks people out, so he knows what to look for. I love this church. I love what God's put into this church. That's part of what I'm preaching this morning. But I want to go one simple verse. We'll get back to Matthew 16 again, but I am just going to jump over to Matthew 16, and I am going to read verse 18. And this is just like a prequel. Make sure I'm at the right. Okay, so yeah. And also say to you, Matthew 16, verse 18. And I also say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. Yeah, cool. The new version's working. We have to go old school for David. He's King James. I'm reading New King James. So it's amazing how he can take the these, the thous, and the stuff like that. I can't do that reading it. I still read thous and this, and so anyway, so that's Matthew 16, verse 18. On this rock I will build my church. What I want to speak to you about this morning is finding your place. There's one thing I've thought of today, is that I believe many people have found their place at a church that they're comfortable with, they're tied in with. But I'm talking about finding your place in God. Okay? God wants to build the church on a rock, and there's no stopping of the building. Okay? You can either be a part of this or not, but what he's doing in this day and time is he is building his church upon the rock, upon the foundation. When I think about what's going on next door with Tanya and her building, as y'all know, this community has blessed Operation Hope. Just tremendously. It floored me when she said we can pay off our buildings. We haven't even purchased them for a year, and we can pay off the buildings. And so we started renovating. Of course, we got the little 29 building, what we call the 29 building back here. We made it a rock climbing playroom. So if you ever have kids, if you can break into that and you got kids that are driving you nuts, it's got walls and stuff, pads. They ought to be okay. Just throw them in there, leave for a while. We won't know. We don't have cameras on there right now. I'll let you know when we do. All right? It was a pretty easy fix. We really didn't go in there, and we added a bathroom, a small bathroom in it. We didn't really do any heavy construction. It was a simple renovation. But when it comes to the 215 that's right next door here, what they just got done doing this past week is they got done cutting the concrete out for new commercial bathrooms. Okay? And so the concrete was supposed to take about a day and a half. I think it took them 4 or 5 days. I mean, it really was a struggle. But they were cutting through a foundation that was pretty rough, all right? And so we couldn't hang sheetrock in there. There's several things you can't do when the foundation is being messed with, all right? So nobody's messing with our foundation as a Christian. There's no cutting into what God has for you. The enemy cannot take away the plan God has for your life. He can deceive you, but he cannot deceive God. He can make you think that he's powerful enough that you can't do this, okay? Or that he's got enough power to take you away from it. He ain't got enough power to mess with God. He's already been cast out. He's already been stomped on. He knows that there's no victory when it comes to God. The only thing that he can do is he can take you out of alignment with what you and God have. This is where I'm talking about finding your place. So I want to jump back into the Old Testament. I told y'all the last time that the Old Testament is just jumping off the pages at me. I'll tell you what it's doing. It's really, enticing is not the right word. It is making the New Testament just more profound when I read between both. And so I want to go back and, Chad, we don't have to go to this scripture. This is just an overview that I'm going to start with. Eventually go to some of these scriptures. But I am going to go back to Exodus. And we're going to go, I'm going to give you a little update, a little storyline. Exodus 24, we find Moses. Basically, the children of Israel, God set a covenant over with the children of Israel. And in chapter 24, y'all don't have to go there because I'm just doing an overview. We're going to jump through, we'll be close to that, trust me. But in chapter 24, we find God setting a covenant with Israel. And we find Moses caught up on the mountain, and he's got Aaron and the sons and 70 priests, and they're all scared of God. The fear of the Lord is strong upon them. They don't want to get close to him, but Moses can go up and talk to him. And basically we find Moses and God about to have a conversation, and it's leading up in chapter 24. That's where it says until we get to the beginning of chapter 25. I am going to read the first 9 verses of chapter 25, and that's in Exodus. And the first 9 verses start like this. We thinking we're pretty good. Yeah. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel that they bring me an offering. From everyone who gives it willingly with his heart you shall take my offering. And this is the offering which you shall take from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, fine linen, and goat's hair, ram skins dyed red, badger skins, and acacia wood." I don't know, I'm probably not saying that right, but y'all know what I mean. Oil for the light, and spices for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense. Onyx stones and stones to be set in the ephod and in the breastplate, and let them make me a sanctuary that I will dwell among them. And according to all that I'll show you, that is the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of the furnishings, this so you shall make it. Verse 1 of that set of scriptures, God gives instructions. He's basically, what he's doing is he's saying, I want the children of Israel to bring an offering. And I want you to bring this material. I want you to ask them for this material, for them to bring an offering of themselves, to bring an offering to me. That I'm going to build a place that I can be a presence. I can have my presence dwell among you. What I'm going to do, children of Israel, is I'm about to build a place that my presence is going to reign. Okay? And when I look at Hohenwald and the time that we're walking in, I believe that the presence of God is searching for a place in our individual hearts where he can reign. But it's going to take some giving upon our parts willingly, that we're going to see this come to fruition. Okay, so this is chapter 25, and I'm going to get in. So from chapter 25 to chapter 32, you are basically looking at how the temple's to be built, the sanctuary is to be built. It goes through, bring the wood, plate it with gold, bring the wood, plate it with silver, put rings on this. We're going to have a place for burnt offerings. We're going to have the lampstand, the oil. We're going to have anointing. We're going to have clothes for the priest. We're going to have clothes for Aaron, that he's going to be the high priest, and then we're going to clothe his sons, and you're going to make the clothes out of this. And everything is set forth for this temple or this sanctuary or this tabernacle to be built for the presence of God to be able to take place. Okay? And so we get to chapter 32. And I know I'm skipping a little bit because I figure y'all do not want me to read all the altar of incense, the daily offerings will be out, it's a lot. Some of the times, I think, what was it, Tony, you said you couldn't wait to get through Leviticus reading? It's like, come on. I challenged my family at the beginning of this year, let's read the Bible all the way through. I have no idea how they're doing. I do know at the end of vacation, which was January 8th, Tanya was about 17 days ahead of everybody. She loves to read. We're not as enthusiastic. We're just going to be happy to go through this in a year. That's the plan. Why venture off the plan? But You're sitting there, and I challenged my family because what I wanted them to do is I wanted them to get the word and for God to be able to speak to them in all the words. And I go and tell you, yes, Leviticus is a little rough, but here I am reading in the middle of the tabernacle is going to be this. And y'all got to realize we're living under a new covenant. I 100% realize that when I'm reading this old covenant with the children of Israel. But there's some things that just jump out to me. And so basically what has happened is we go from 25 to 32, and you've got Moses that's on the mount getting all this. And so I want to pick it up in chapter 32, verse 1. So now, when the people saw that Moses delayed coming down from the mountain, and I might not give Chad enough time. Maybe I did. The people gathered together to Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us gods that shall go before us. And as for this Moses," as for this guy, you know Moses, the one who did all the talking to Pharaoh and everything. "As for this guy, we don't know," let's see, I'm paraphrasing. "For this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." All right. Verse 1, chapter 32. When we don't see God move fast enough for us, what do? There's a time in your life where you have to be patient. And nobody wants to pray for patience, and nobody wants to deal with patience because they don't have time for it. And if you notice in our society, everything has sped up that we want everything tomorrow. If you're in the line at McDonald's and it takes you more than 3 minutes to get a meal, you're furious. I thought this was fast food. If your waiter doesn't come by after 2 minutes of you being there, doesn't she realize that I'm thirsty? No, probably not. You probably didn't tell her when you walked through the door. But we want everything immediately, and we don't understand why. I think back, if you think back to like the 1700s, they didn't have a gas station sitting down on the corner of the road that you could go pick up a candy bar and a soft drink. You better have water sitting back at the house that's clean enough to drink, or you're going to be thirsty. You're going to be out in the woods walking and looking for it. Not everything was handed. And so we find the children of Israel. Moses has been up on the mountain for 40 days, and it's timely, and they're sick of it. And I'm sitting here thinking, how many times, God, have you been wanting to move in my life? And instead, I jumped and tried to do your things my own way. Because if you look at verses 2, and Aaron said to them, starting verse 2, and Aaron said to them, "Break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives and your sons and your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people broke off the golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them to Aaron, and he received the gold from their hand, and he fashioned it with the engraving tool. And he made the molded calf that they said, "This is your God, O Israel, and that I brought you out of the land of Egypt." So when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow is the feast of the Lord." Then they rose early on the next day, offered burnt offerings, and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go get down, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves." Verses 2 through 6, a lot of us automatically think that they started worshiping other gods. And in a sense, you might be right, but actually what they did is they replaced God with who they wanted to be God. And there's a big difference in just starting to worship the gods, other gods that we know, and putting our own image and our own likeness on the God that we're trying to serve. Because he's not doing what we want him to do fast enough. I'm not getting the answer for my purpose fast enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make my own purpose, and we're going to call it God. I'm looking for a blessing, but my blessing's not coming fast enough, so I'm going to do it myself. Number one way I see this, and church people, it's not just church people, but I'm going to tell you something. Have you ever seen somebody buy a car that was way too expensive for them to buy? Isn't it a blessing from God? Look at my new blessing from God. I'm not telling you about the loan rate I got on it. I'm not telling you how many years and months of payments I got on it. I'm not telling you that by the time I pay this off, this is not going to be worth anything what I gave for it. As a matter of fact, it's going to devalue the whole time I have it. I'm not going to tell you that. What I'm going to tell you is, did you look what the Lord gave me? How deceived are we when God doesn't move the way we want him to move? And you look at things that they're supposed to be lined up this way, they're supposed to be lined up this way, they're supposed to be lined up this way, and God's trying to say, honey, I'm trying to take you out of the box that you stuck yourself in. And if you can't look past this, we're in trouble. Because if you look at the next verses, which I don't understand is, Moses comes down from the mountain angry. He's got two what the New King James is calling tablets, okay? For kids in here, it's not the tablets y'all are thinking of. You can't swipe left, swipe right. But anyway, he's got these two stones that it says were hand engraved by the hand of God. And he's so angry when he sees the people. He's coming off this mountain, and what was it, Joshua? I should call him Jacob, shouldn't I? Jacob coming down with Moses. That's what I got messed up last time. He's coming down with him, and he's sitting there saying, that sounds like war. And he's like, no, this ain't war. This is nonsense is what this is. He's angry that he breaks the tablets. He burns the golden calf. If you look at Aaron in this, I want to tell y'all, I think the deception of the world and what the enemy's trying to do, I want y'all to realize that's not just upon us common folk that sit out in the pews. That's coming after your pastor. Because Aaron is set to be the priest, okay? When God went through Moses with what the high priest was going to wear, he gave the name to the high priest, Aaron. Aaron's down with the people. I want to give you 3 verses to look at Aaron, and I'm going to tell y'all that you're not too far away from God. If you drift away from God, you're not too far away, because I want y'all to look. In 32 verse 4, let me see, I've got them written down. Hang on. This will make it easier. In chapter 32, verse 4, Aaron molded the golden calf. Okay? The priest who God is going to set over the tabernacle for his presence to live in has molded the golden calf. He's the one who told the people to bring the rings. In verse 22, Aaron is getting questioned by Moses. Moses comes down off the mount, and he's like, what in the world is going on? How did these people turn you? He says, you know, all these people are for evil. Chad, I don't know if you can get verse 22 up there. But if you could, it's 32 verse 22. You got it? Okay. And so Aaron said, do not let the anger of my Lord become hot. You know the people, that they are set on evil. It's a flat out lie. You know these people are set on evil. They just wanted to make this calf. And in verse 20, this is the greatest one of all, verse 24. Chad, if you could get verse 24 up there. And I said to them, whoever has any gold, let him break it off. So they gave it to me, and I cast it in the fire, and a calf came out. Do you see the enemy's presence trying to take Aaron away from what he's supposed to be in the life of these people? He's supposed to be a high priest. He's saying, look, these people made me do it. They're so evil. And I just put some gold in there, and poof. Out came a cow. Can you believe it? Moses probably went, no, I can't believe it, but we're not going to lie with this. The nonsense that they carry, they're trying to carry themselves into a God that they're trying to create that fits and lines up with what they want and what they believe that they see is what God's supposed to be in the land today, ends up costing 3,000 men their life. There's no telling how much time it cost them, because if you look at chapter 25, when this all started, and Moses is on the mountain, he's sitting there getting the word from God about the way the tabernacle is going to be. It's not until chapter 35 does he get back on the mountain they start doing this, okay? They went through all this, and here the children of Israel sitting there serving a golden calf that they're putting in their image, and I'm wondering how much the church has created a golden calf in today's time. And I believe with all my heart, when I say that the Spirit and the presence of God is falling, during our time and on this people, and it's going to fall, and it's going to continue, it's going to be strong this year, it's because this kind of nonsense is going away. Christians will recognize that they've had golden calves for years sitting in front of sitting in their sanctuary. They realize that their halls and everything that they've tried to do that hasn't worked for anybody is being broken. And they're saying, God, we don't want this. And so Moses goes up the mountain, and when he comes back the second time, if you look in the next chapters, and I'm shortening up the story for time, I don't know, I might have plenty of time. I hadn't even looked at the time today. I hadn't had time to. But if you look at what Moses is doing, I know that sounds funny, but it's the truth. Mom was sitting down here saying, hey, can you get this keyboard up? And I'm sitting up there saying, if I don't get this working in the next 5 minutes, we're not going to have a service. So that was my thoughts on it. But anyway, but if you look at when Moses went up the next time and the presence that was on his life, it said the presence fell upon him. It says that the clouds set up on the top of the glory of God set on the top of the mountain. And the people viewed that as danger. And Moses walked in the middle of it. And the fear of the Lord, when it says to determine your salvation with fear and trembling, it means you need to determine what you're going to be afraid of and what you're not going to be afraid of. Because the presence of God cannot come over you and take you, and your fear of the presence of God cannot keep you from what God is wanting to do in your life. Fear is trying to take you out. When you sing fear is not my future, you are, that's what he's talking about. On that mountain, you're sitting there with Jesus Christ, with Jesus, that's later in the thing. You're sitting there with Moses and God and a cloud. And that presence comes upon him, and he comes back down with 2 tablets and a face that he has to cover up before the people. And when David says something like a woman that's a prayer warrior comes in, and she walks in, and she says, Jesus. And a few minutes later, she says, Jesus. And the third time she says, Jesus, the presence falls. What do you think that is? Folks, we're primed for a revival here in this town. We're primed for the presence of God to sit over this town like never before. When I read the rest of that story, one of the amazing things is that he said, take up an offering. When they finally get to taking up the offering, if it's in chapter 35, verses 4 through 9, he says, Moses finally gets in front of the people and tells them what God said. God says to bring me an offering out of the willingness of your heart, and he wants you to bring gold and silver and bronze and purple and red, and you know the list from earlier. He wants you to bring all this, and if you look over in verses, let's see, whoops, I'm turning to the wrong chapter. But if you look in the next verses over, and the people give more than enough. You look down here in verse 36, verse 4, then all the craftsmen who were doing all the work of the sanctuary came from the work which he was doing, and they spoke to Moses, saying, the people bring much more than enough for the service of the work which the Lord has commanded us to do. See, I look at our town right now, and I look at the people, I almost compare it to the children of Israel at this time, because right now I have seen more come into the houses and the glory to do work for the glory of God than I ever have before. When I talk about people that gave to hope, it is unprecedented last year what came in. It's never been that close, even close to that before. But I also know that things of what Blondie has said and what Jeff has said, of people have given. Okay? And so the people are willingly giving out of their heart right now. The tabernacle's being built. We need to get to a place where the glory of God can fall upon Hornwall. And when I talked about living a life out of repentance, that's part of that. But I can't be afraid of what God's got for me to do. I can't be afraid to stand up in front of you and preach his word if that's what he's called me to do. I'm going to tell you next week, you don't want to miss next week. Don't worry, I'm not preaching. At least not yet. David hasn't said anything. I don't think David said anything about this, but we're going to have Hope Center Ministries. We're going to have a graduate that's been clean for quite a while. We're going to have a guy that's in the program, and then we're going to have one of the women from their program give testimonies. You don't want to miss this. The one reason you don't want to miss this is because you don't want to miss the miracles that God is doing right before us. That's what's happening. I can tell you my testimony is a miracle, but it's not just me. And when we start getting to a place where the cloud, it says the cloud, the glory of God was like a cloud on that mountain. If you notice when it says later on that when the tabernacle was built and it led the children of Israel, the cloud fell over them during the day and it was a fire by night. And it was the presence of God. And what's going on at Asbury, I can tell you what went on at Asbury 50 years ago. There was one person there that said, God, I need more of you. And I give everything in my life away to you. And God said, okay, I'm about to fill you with the Spirit that you've never had. And I'm about to give you power that you've never had. And I'm about to set life and purpose over you that you've never had. And when you come out of here, you're about to change lives like you've never had. And that man's retired, and it's 50 years later, and what's going on down there is sitting, just one person is sitting in there right now that is saying, God, I want all of what you have. And it's no different that if we'll sit here in this environment on a Sunday morning, if we'll sit in on a Sunday night, if we'll be here at prayer time, it is no different than us sitting here at this altar and saying, God, I want all that you have. If you don't think his presence won't fall here, folks, it's time for the dwelling place, it's time for the seat of oil, it's time to every church to create a tabernacle where the cloud and the glory of God can fall upon this town. It is not time to sit here and play with golden calves. And it's time for our preachers to wake up and get a word from God instead of just an easy word that comes out of this, because there's so many messages in this book that are easy to say. I'm not trying to speak an easy word. I'm trying to speak an encouraging word over the time that we're living in and what I'm seeing and what I believe God is showing me. And it's taking my life on the altar and me saying, God, I want your presence. I know things aren't going as fast as I need them to, or I think I need them to. I know you're not moving like I thought you would on this. I'm going to tell you, this week has been nothing but an attack. The end of this week, I told Tanya, I was so discouraged Friday. I was sitting there because everything that I thought was going smooth was like everything just slapped me in the face all at once. It's nothing demonic. It's nothing that I did to cause it. It was just like, how can everything moving so fast forward all of a sudden be stopped and almost take a step back? Is what I felt like. And God's saying, I don't need you to move forward right now. I need you to sit back and listen. I need you to spend a little bit of time on the mountain. And what I'm referring this to is when I go out of the Old Testament, y'all remember the first verse I gave you? I'm about to build this church, right? All right, so we're going to go to Matthew 16, where this whole message for me started. See, the way God works in my life right now is he's jumping from my devotion to my time with him, to the songs, to what other people just give me. I had one guy, we was talking, I didn't even know he was that solid of a Christian. You know what I'm saying? I know he's a good guy, but I don't know him that well. And he starts telling me the verses that he's reading. He says, you need to check this out. He says, this really spoke to me, and I'm sitting there going, who is this? And then I go, okay. I'm going to tell you, the other night, I'm sitting at Taco Bell. Yeah, I'm good. Me and Tanya were going to go eat. And, we never go fast food. So Maya and the girls were at Casa, okay? So we weren't going to go interrupt Maya and the girls because we don't want Maya to think that we're spying on her, even though she's 19. She doesn't care if we spy on her anyway. She doesn't, okay? So Tanya, she's like, where do you want to go? And I'm sitting there thinking, well, you've got the Mexican buffet over there that has cheese dip on it, and you got Hank's that I could eat, and I'm thinking anywhere. And she goes, well, you know, you want to do this? And I was just about to tell her no. And she goes, let's just go to Taco Bell. And I'm like, no. I'm like, sure, I told you I didn't care where we go. Because, I mean, I'm sticking true to my words that I said just, 10 seconds ago. I don't care where we go. So we're going to Taco Bell. I call it another name, but I am not saying that in church. It has something to do with 80s. Anyway, we go to Taco Bell, and we're sitting there, and this guy's sitting on the opposite side of the restaurant, and I can't keep from thinking about what's going on, okay? I don't know. He walked by us, and he sort of looked and stared, and I looked and stared. I thought, that's just sort of awkward, especially I have no idea who this is. It's not anybody that looks familiar to me. It's not like, oh, I might know this guy. It is nothing like that. And Tanya goes, we're sitting at the table, and we're about to leave, and goes, he's homeless. And she called it. And I walk up, and he gets up at the same time. I'm telling you, it's God ordained. And he goes, and I said, what do you need? He goes, what can you give me? He says, you ain't got nothing. I'm fine. I got my tent. I got my sleeping bag. It's supposed to get down to 20-something degrees that night. Was this Thursday or Friday night? Whatever night it got down to 20-something degrees. This is night going into it. I said, man, I know I can't give you much, but is there anything that you need right now? And he says, well, I'm about to run out of these little propane tanks that run my heater in the tent, okay? And I said, I knew that it was going to be by Walmart, and I said, I'm headed to Walmart, meet me over there. He had done, took off walking, we get in the car, we drive over there, he comes in to the store, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you, y'all think the story's about the homeless guy. It ain't got nothing to do with, it's got something to do with him. This is what, we're walking through Walmart, and we go over to the camping section to get the propane tanks, and I've got to get a switch to replace up there because one's acting up. And that didn't fix my problem, by the way. But anyway, so I'm walking around to electronics. I pass my daughter, okay? She says, hey, Dad. I said, hey, I love you. I keep walking. No big deal to her. She knows the guys with me that she's never seen before. What's going on? Next person I see is I want to be careful to say my best friend. I think of him my best friend. He might not think of me that close. But anyway, it's my buddy here. And I hadn't seen him in a couple of days, but I know he's been going through some stuff. And he walks by me, stops, gives me a hug, said, what's up? The next person I see is somebody that graduated the Hope Center probably about 6 or 8 months ago. Been there a while, so he's been clean for a while. Stop and talk to him for a second. And we check out, and his stuff is like $10. I'm sitting there thinking, my Lord, I never had anybody not ask me for anything that was so cheap, you know what I mean? Just heat for a night. And it was like nothing. But we went out there, and he walked to the left, and I walked straight to the car. God wouldn't tell me to follow him and try to go do something for him. I'm pretty sure Kevin probably does more for him than any of us ever know. So the propane tanks were cheap, and that wasn't that big a deal, but God said, I want you to see what I'm doing in this land. He said, I'll show you 3 people as you walk through that store. And he said, and the person that just went to the left of you needs to be restored just like them. He said, I showed you family. He said, son, if you wouldn't have followed me, I don't know that Maya would have been here. He said, I showed you your best friend that does more ministry than you, that gives to the Hope Center and does more for those guys, but that got you into the Hope Center ministries and drawn you in, that drew you to come towards me, to follow me more in your ministry here in Horn. He said, I put him right in front of you. So I got your family and your best friend, and the last thing I showed you was the miracle of the guy that used to sit there and play volleyball while he was in the center, that 8 months later, he's still doing just fine. And he's following God. And he says, I've got this town covered if you will follow me. He said, do not hesitate to listen to my word. He said, but I need you to follow the glory of God and not follow your own heart and not to get too caught up and too advanced and sitting here and think that you got it all together for me not to get you. And I go and tell you, it was a simple Walmart trip that turned into just a miraculous time. And I came out to Tanya, and I got in the car, and I said, do you remember that song that says, make me a sanctuary? And she started singing it. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'm going to be a living sanctuary to you. For y'all that ain't old school church, I'm sorry I was raised in it. I said that song tonight means more to me than it ever has in my life. She had no idea what God revealed to me. She had no idea the 3 people I saw through there. Oh, I did tell her I saw Maya. So she would know that Maya was at Walmart. That was it, you know. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, y'all, what I see in the story of Moses and what's coming up, oh, I forgot, I got to get into Matthew a little bit, don't I? If you jump back before Peter and I'm about to build this rock, build my church upon this rock, I'm going to look at the verse before that. This is Matthew 16, starting in verse 13. And, yeah. When Jesus came into the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked the disciples, saying, Who do men say that I am, the Son of Man? Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? So they said, Some say John the Baptist, some Elijah, and others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. And he said to them, But who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter answered and said, You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered and said, Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood have not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And also say that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades, in other words, the power of death, will not be able to stand against it. And what Peter realized is who Jesus was in his life. And if the children of Israel would have realized the first time that Moses is still on the mountain with God, and instead of building an image that they thought that they would be praising God with, waited upon the Lord, we wouldn't have had 10 more chapters in the book of Exodus. We could have skipped a whole lot of people dying. We could have gone through all that. We could have done away with that if they would have made their hearts a sanctuary and realized that God was moving in his time. And as we move forward in this year, and I see more of God in each of our lives, let's not forget who is the one making the moves, who is the one performing miracles. And let's not try to rush him, but let's try to follow and give him a place where he can send his glory down. And when we follow by the day, we'll see the cloud and the glory and the presence of God on our lives, and at night that we'll have a fire that can set us forward. And as we move forward in this year, and what I believe God has for us, I believe his presence will fall, if our hearts will fall first. Do you have anything you want to say? You good to go? Well, last time, I gave you the option last time, you jumped up, so I didn't, you know. I'm thankful for the opportunity that my father-in-law has given me. I'm thankful for the heart that my dad set in me years ago. I go and tell y'all, these revivals that are going on, I want you to pray for those people. I want you to lift them up. I want you to pray for the presence of God to continue to fall. Because when I look at Dad today, I know he's retired, and I know y'all get to hear him sing. We didn't, singing was very secondary. I mean, besides him singing on the stage as a backup singer to whoever the praise and worship leader was at the church, I mean, I guess you did sing some. Maybe I just don't remember as much. But when I think 50 years ago, when I think today, I think Dad's revival has been continuing for 50 years. And I'm thankful for you that you set the presence of God upon your life that is shown through your children. Because it has changed me for who I am today. And David, I thank you for the opportunity to be able to stand in front of these people. I thank y'all, and I love each and every one of you. And I hope you know that God is my heart, and that his words are what I want to speak in front of you. I don't want to speak my words. My words are just nonsense. They probably mostly be about football. Or at least they used to would be. But I want to show you a broken man that wants to have the presence of God all over his life, that when we move forward as a church and as a body, it's not me standing up here moving forward, it's us together. Because besides a Sunday morning hour-and-a-half message, we're all in this together. And I'm going to tell you, the men and the women, I don't know if there'll be more than one, but the women's centers that are coming here next week, I want you to be here to rejoice with them, to love on them, but also minister to them. I do want to say one thing, and this is sort of, I should have prayed and then said this, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's a slide up here that's got the last slide that shows during our announcements. The last slide is a Hope Ministries fundraiser. It's an online fundraiser, so you're not going to have somebody come up. But if you're thinking about giving to the Hope Ministries, the Women's Center and the Men's Center are both doing it. I'm sure they might say something about it next week, but in the text message that me and David got, I already know that they're not going to ask for money. But I do believe in these ministries and the support. And if you go online, you can watch that link, or I'm sure they'll talk about it next week. But if you go on there, select which center it is, whether you want the women's or the men's, but 100% of that money stays at that center. And it's for upgrades, it's for upkeep. I know they've been doing some plumbing projects at the men's center that needed to be done, things fixed. But if you're going to give, you might want to give that way, because it also helps the way that the regional looks at their numbers. I think regional or whoever, the national over the Hope Center Ministries, is probably wondering how in the world this little town does what we do. And I'm just waiting for the day that they finally come and see it. Because I believe it's going to be a model that changes a lot of stuff in the way that they operate. And when churches come together, and when men and when hearts, when we build a tabernacle out here on earth, a sanctuary that God's presence can lie in, this is what we start seeing, and this is the glory of it. So, Lord, I just thank you for this morning. I thank you for the hearts of the people, and I thank you for your presence. And, Lord, I just pray that your presence just remains strong, not only in our lives, but in our land, and that you'll heal us and be with us. In Jesus' name, amen.